Welcome to the Powered Industrial Trucks training. My name is Wyatt Stoof, and I will be taking you through two portions of training today. We'll be starting with forklift, and then we will move on to aerial platform lift, also known as boom lift. And with that, we'll also get into some fall protection. Some of the main objectives we will be covering today include training requirements, identification and load capacity, attachments and modifications, load and truck stability, safe operating procedures, maintenance and inspection, racking and unracking loads, loading dock procedures, and battery versus propane considerations. And as I mentioned, these objectives are initially going to be for the forklift portion. We'll have a new set of objectives that we'll be touching on once we get to the aerial platform lift section. So the overview, the Powered Industrial Truck Program identifies general requirements relating to fire protection, design and maintenance of industrial trucks, forklift, motorized hand trucks, aerial platform lifts that are powered by electric motors or internal combustion engines. Also identifies operator certification requirements for industrial trucks. The Powered Industrial Truck Training course is designed to provide the basic classroom portion and hands-on experience for the operation of powered industrial trucks, which includes forklifts, aerial platform lifts, motorized pallet jacks, order pickers, narrow aisle reach trucks, and sit-down counterbalanced forklifts. Attendees will acquire the knowledge to safely operate powered industrial trucks and prevent accidents. By the end of the course, some of the things you'll be able to do include operate powered industrial trucks without accidents, don a harness when operating a genie boom in accordance with the material, safely replace the empty propane tank on a powered industrial truck with a full one, fill out the pre-use inspection form for both forklifts and aerial platform lifts, discuss various safety rules and regulations relating to powered industrial trucks, inspect their loads prior to picking them up to reduce damaged loads. So why are you here today? Odds are you haven't driven a PIT before, a powered industrial truck, and your employer is requiring you to, or you're going through this training as a refresher, or you recently got an incident, accident, near miss, and you're needing recertification for that instance. So again, why you're here today: reduce accidents, reduce product damage, reduce risk of injury, reduce building damage, and OSHA requires that you are trained every 3 years. And if you're involved in an accident in the workplace, you must be retrained. Some of the things I mentioned already. And like I said, with OSHA, you're here today because the PIT operator training is required by the U.S. Department of Labor and OSHA. Title 29 Code of Federal Regulations 1910.178 covers this particular reservation or regulation. So who am I? While we go through this, I just want you to think of what the answer might be. So starting at the top, I am more powerful than the combined armies of the world. I have destroyed more than all wars of the nations. I am more deadly than bullets or missiles, and I have wrecked more homes and jobs than the mightiest siege of guns. I steal billions every year. I spare no one. I find my victims among the rich and poor alike, among the young and old, the strong and weak, the high level and low level workers, widows and orphans know me well. I rise to such proportions that I cast my shadows over every field of professional as well as non-professional, from the humblest labor to the nuclear scientist. I kill thousands of employees each year. I lurk unseen and do my best work silently. I am relentless. I am everywhere, on land and sea and in the air, in the home, on the job, on the streets and highways. I breed sickness and death, yet few people make a real effort to avoid me or even take me seriously. I destroy, crush, maim. I give nothing. I take all. I am your worst enemy. So I'm assuming you guys have a vast variety of guesses for what this might be. So take some guesses. So the answer is carelessness. I am carelessness. Carelessness is the failure to give sufficient attention to avoiding harm or errors, also negligence. So carelessness, that right there is the number one culprit in powered industrial truck accidents and fatalities. You might not think so, but it is. If you stop and think about it, all it takes is for one careless act and someone ends up hurt because someone was careless on a powered industrial truck. So getting into some forklift accidents, some data points, some real world stories that might hit close to home for some. Baltimore, Maryland, 2012. A worker at the Domino's Sugar Factory in Baltimore died early in a forklift accident. Maryland's first industrial workplace fatality this year, authorities said, like I said, back in 2012. City paramedics responded to the waterfront factory in the 1100 block of Key Highway at 2:42 in the morning. According to Chief Kevin Cartwright, the city fire department spokesman, they found a man suffering from trauma to his head near a forklift, he said. So upon further research, the operator of this forklift was not wearing a seatbelt. He was pronounced dead on the scene. Even so happened that 3 other employees were injured from the crash, and total damage from this accident came out to about $2.5 million. Another one, Mount Union man killed in forklift accident. We got Hummel's Wharf, Pennsylvania. A 38-year-old man is dead following an accident involving a forklift at a Snyder County construction site. State police identified the victim as a 38-year-old Ronald Collins of Mount Union, Huntingdon County. This happened Wednesday at the Monroe Marketplace construction site in Hummel's Wharf. So this individual wasn't even operating the forklift that ended up passing away. He was walking alongside the forklift and was run over by the back wheel. Snyder County Deputy Coroner said that the individual died at the scene of the accident due to a traumatic head injury. And this is a prime example of why you must be cautious and aware of pedestrians when operating a powered industrial truck. It's not always the operator of it that is involved in the accident. That's why we stress the importance of being aware of your surroundings, being aware of other pedestrians and whatnot. So top 10 OSHA fines, fiscal year 2020, we've got fall protection, we've got 5,400 violations, hazard communication, almost 3,200, respiratory protection, we got 2,600, scaffolding, 2,500, ladders, 2,100, lockout tagout, a little over 2,000, and then powered industrial trucks, right in the middle, we've got almost 2,000, fall protection, 1,600, which can definitely fall within this powered industrial truck training, which is why we're going to be covering that as well. PPE, eye and face protection, 1,300, and then machine guarding, 1,300 as well. This is according to the National Safety Council. Like I said, PITs are about in the middle when it comes to OSHA fines. Those other 9 standards are all followed here at Boeing as well. It makes you think where the focus might be, which is would be under fall protection or any of that stuff. So forklift accidents average per year, around 75 to 100 workers are killed annually in forklift accidents with a rough average of 87 deaths per year. OSHA's most recent estimates indicate that between 35,000 and 62,000 injuries occur every year involving forklifts. And this number, the 75 to 100 workers that are killed annually with the average of 87 deaths per year, that number has increased almost 30% within the last decade. Forklift accidents that result in serious injury total just about 35,000 annually. So injuries and fatalities. It's a little bar chart that kind of goes over the different causes of injuries and fatalities. So you got tip over, which leads the way at 25%. Struck by lift truck is second at 18%, and then you got struck by falling load at 14%. Elevated employee on truck is 12%. Ran off loading dock is 7%. Improper maintenance is down at 6%. With all those numbers of fatalities and injuries, majority of those come from, like I said, tip over leads the way, and then being struck by follows second. And then all of these causes will certainly be discussed in depth throughout this training course. So what is a powered industrial truck? Specifically, we'll get into forklifts here. Considered any mobile power-propelled truck that is capable of carrying, pushing, pulling, lifting, or stacking materials. Commonly known as forklifts, fork trucks, lift trucks, boom lifts, etc. It does exclude earth-moving, over-the-road hauling, compressed air, or non-flammable compressed gas-operated industrial trucks, scissor lifts, and farm vehicles. So we'll get into a quick video.
It's really nice out here. Thanks for coming. Hey, well, welcome to Forklift Basics. Let's start at the top. A forklift is a mechanical device classified as a type of powered industrial truck. Like other equipment of this type, such as motorized pallet jacks, a forklift is used to move or lift loads. Pretty simple, right? Well, forklifts can cause serious injury or death if they're misused, improperly maintained, or if the operator isn't properly trained on how to use the equipment safely. While there are many similarities between forklifts, such as basic operating controls, there are also many differences. For example, some forklifts are approved for use in certain hazardous locations, while others are not. And some are built for specific tasks and work environments. If you're thinking of a powered industrial truck, you might visualize the standard sit-down forklift. It's the most common type. You may encounter other powered industrial trucks where you work, like stand-up rider trucks, order pickers, or powered pallet jacks. Always practice safe operating procedures every time you step up to the controls of a forklift. Remember, you're the one person responsible for your safety and the safety of others when operating this equipment. The very first step in safe operating procedures is to make sure your forklift is ready for the day's work ahead. OSHA requires that all powered industrial trucks, including forklifts, be examined at least daily before being placed in service. If the forklift is used around the clock, it needs to be examined after every shift. The defects may be corrected by a qualified person, but it may be up to you as the forklift operator to conduct a pre-use inspection at the start of your shift. Come on, let's go out and take a look at what we're talking about. Time to dive back into the operator manual. Follow the manufacturer's instructions in here and use your employer's checklist for guidance. It's a good idea to have a checklist to make sure you don't miss any steps. The checklist can also be saved as part of the maintenance record. There are two parts to a pre-use inspection: the walk-around inspection and a seated inspection. Let's watch another pro handle a walk-around inspection.
When performing the walk-around, start with the tires, making sure that they're in good condition.
Before you pick up a load, make sure you know exactly what you'll be lifting. There's a big difference between a light, centered load and a heavy, off-centered load. Confirm the load is within the capacity limits for the forklift. Is it balanced? Will it be secure? If the load is unstable, restack it or attach the load securely to the pallet with shrink wrap. If there's any possibility that the load might fall backward, make sure there's a load backrest extension in place. If the load has an uneven shape, be aware of any special stacking requirements before you pick it up. Know where and how you'll safely stack the load before you lift it. And don't forget, the shape of the load could affect the center of gravity and your unit's stability.
There are a few things you want to make sure you do as you pick up a load. Before you raise a load, check for overhead obstructions. Look for things like lights, pipes, or sprinkler systems. Set the width of the forks as far apart as possible under the load to evenly distribute the weight. Next, drop the forks to the floor and slowly position them under the load, driving forward until the forks are completely under the load.
If you have permission and the proper training for battery or cylinder changes, take care of the job while wearing the right PPE. This may include eye and face protection, foot protection, gloves, and an apron. Know where the eye wash station is, as well as the shower and other emergency equipment like spill cleanup supplies. As an additional and probably obvious precaution, keep any open flames, including cigarettes, away from refueling areas. Looks like we're ready to see an LPG cylinder swap in action.
I always follow these steps when changing a cylinder. I have the unit parked with the engine running. I always make sure I have my protective gloves on so I can protect my hands from liquid propane freeze burns.
Close the fuel line valve on the cylinder and let the engine run until it stops. This guarantees that the connection hose is empty of propane. Then shut off the ignition. I'm going to disconnect the hose and the holding straps. Then lift the empty cylinder off.
Forklift safety may involve a lot of factors, but knowing the controls and limitations of the units you operate and keeping them in mind will help you work without incident. Make sure you understand how to safely recharge or refuel the forklifts you're authorized to operate. Only install attachments or modifications if they are approved and the lift's capacity is updated. And take a proactive role in the maintenance of your forklift, reporting defects before they become deadly hazards.
So that is the first video that we'll be looking at. It covers some information that we haven't gotten to yet, but that's not a problem at all. We're going to get into some of that, like I mentioned. So next we got certification requirements. Each individual truck operator or each industrial truck operator shall be competent to operate an industrial truck safely as demonstrated by the successful completion of the training and evaluation. Prior to permitting an employee to operate an industrial truck, except for training purposes, each operator shall successfully complete the training required by this program. Each type of industrial truck requires certification specific to the particular industrial truck. An evaluation of each industrial truck's operator's performance shall be conducted at least once every 3 years. So just like driving a car, you must go through required training as well as pass an evaluation. We all remember when we were 16 years old, had 15, 16, we had to sit through the driver's ed classes and then did the maneuverability and the driver's test. So similar to that, only difference is OSHA requires employee recertification every 3 years for this, and with a car, once you get it, you're good. And completing the forklift training won't get you certified for an aerial platform lift, so that would be a separate. Refresher training. So refresher training is required when the operator has been observed to operate the vehicle in an unsafe manner. Operator has been involved in an accident or near-miss incident. Operator has received an evaluation that reveals the operator is not operating the industrial truck safely. The operator is assigned to drive a different type of industrial truck. A condition in the workplace changes in a manner that could affect safe operation of the industrial truck. So an example for requiring refresher training would be damaging a wall. There was actually an instance of this that I witnessed a couple weeks ago. An employee was driving a stand-up forklift. A box on a pallet was up against the wall. He went in with the forks, didn't realize that he had penetrated the wall, proceeded to lift up, damaging the wall, pulled out, noticed it, reported it immediately. So that individual his license was revoked and he had to go through refresher training. So like I mentioned, your license is pulled, retrained until you can operate again. So training overview. Trainees may operate an industrial truck only under the direct supervision of persons who have the knowledge, training, and experience to train operators and evaluate their competence, and where such operation does not endanger the trainee or other employees. Training shall consist of a combination of formal instruction, which includes lecture, discussion, interactive computer learning, videotape, written material, which is what we're doing here. Practical learning, demonstrations performed by the trainer, and practical exercises performed by the trainee. And then evaluation of the operator's performance in the workplace, which we'll get to. And Boeing will certify each operator has been trained and evaluated as required by this training. That certification includes the name of the operator, date of training, date of evaluation, and the name of the person who did the training. Responsibilities. The site safety contact or EHS representative is responsible for monitoring employee retraining and maintaining records of individuals trained and certified to operate industrial trucks. The site safety contact has full authority to revoke a license under but not limited to the following situations. If an employee tests positive for drugs or alcohol, when an employee requires remedial training for unsafe behavior, if there's an accident or injury, or any sort of property damage. Anytime when management and or the site safety contact deem necessary due to the severity of the accident. So for example, the story I just shared, if it was worse, or if it was that employee's second, third, fourth, fifth offense, we could permanently revoke his license. And then lastly would be upon notification of a medical condition that renders the operator unable to perform the job safely. Only authorized trainers as designated by the site safety contact are permitted to certify powered industrial truck operators. So back to that first point regarding the site safety contact being responsible for maintaining the records. It's smart for whoever's in charge, whoever it may be, to keep some sort of spreadsheet which tracks dates and names of employees who were trained. Personally, that's what I do. I've got an Excel spreadsheet with names, color-coded it, where I can easily track when employees were trained, when they're due, what training they went through, etc. So more general requirements. Industrial trucks are not permitted in areas where flammable vapors may accumulate. An example of that would be some sort of paint booth. I know we got paint booths here at Boeing, so industrial trucks are not permitted to go in a room like that or an atmosphere like that. All incidents, including property damage and or drop materials, must be reported to your supervisor immediately. Operators must complete documented retraining prior to operating a forklift after an incident. In order to operate an industrial truck, in general, the employee must have no adverse vision problems that can't be corrected by glasses or contact lens, no physical impairments that would impair safe operations of a forklift or industrial vehicle, no neurological disorder that could affect balance or consciousness, no medical condition that requires medication for perception, vision, or physical ability. So, industrial truck terminology. So we've got some errors pointing out at some of the main aspects or parts of the forklift. So first we'll start with overhead guard. It's what I call it the cage. Next we got counterweight. After that we got steer axle. I know forklifts are you steer from the reverse. It takes some getting used to. You got the drive axle. You got obviously you got the forks. You got the carriage. Load backrest, or the load backrest and the carriage is kind of where the load rests. And then you got the lift cylinder and drive chain, and then the mast. So yeah, like I said, you can see the common terminology for the forklift. And then we got data plates. So data plates are immediate source of information concerning the safe load capacity. Load capacity of truck in pounds, load center in inches. So this plate here, the lifting capacity described on this plate is 3,200 pounds with a load center of 24 inches and up to a height of 108 inches from the floor. You can find the data plate located somewhere on your power industrial truck. Usually it's in the middle near the seat. It includes important information such as weight, fuel type, and forklift load capacity. So here's an example of a data plate. Here you can see this is a power industrial truck. It has a load capacity of 5,000 pounds, 4,500 with the forks only, but include the mast. You get an extra 500. It's got a load center of 24 inches. And it can be brought up to a height of 156 inches from the floor. Next, here's another one. This one has a load capacity of 5,000 pounds as well. Load center of 24 inches, and it can be brought up to a height of 156 inches off the floor. The difference from this one from the one before is you can note that the truck is battery powered because it has the weight with and without the battery. So some safety measures, some safety aspects to the forklift. You got safety lights, help prevent collisions between pedestrians and forklifts. They're important because not only do they help the operator, but they help notify pedestrians to an approaching forklift. In the safety applications, it is important that the lights are disruptive to pedestrians, making them stop and see the hazard. Forklift controls. Controls vary on different PITs. They're what makes the PIT operate like it's supposed to. You get the lifting of the forks, you get the side shift, tilt, all that good stuff. In some cases, the controls and their proper uses are located inside the truck, making it easy for the operator to reference. So I know I've seen forklifts that in that bottom left picture, those are actually located a little sticker underneath, and then even the control knobs have those listed on there, or the images on there. Personally, I recommend taking a few minutes once you first get on the forklift to familiarize yourself with the controls, because it's very difficult to do once you're on the move trying to pick something up and don't know what's what. Forklift attachments. You got push-pull, roll clamps, extensions. They can be used for a variety of reasons. Some of the most common we see are the fork extenders, which are used when the regular fork sizes aren't sufficient for the load. Others include roll clamps, the bottom, which can be helpful for picking up and rotating barrels. Modifications. Modifications and additions which affect capacity and safe operation shall not be performed without manufacturer's prior written approval. They might seem like a good idea, a cool, fun idea, but that's usually never the case. Modifying any sort of PIT is prohibited unless it's approved by the manufacturer. So there's an example of one right there that is not prohibited. So when operating a forklift, keep hands off. Keep feet inside. Keep load 6 to 8 inches above the ground. Tilt back. And yeah, like I mentioned, just some safe practices for operating forklifts. If you're gonna remember anything, make sure you remember those. As well as safety belt. Always put your safety belt on. It's the #1 rule when getting under a forklift. Always put your seatbelt on as soon as you sit down. It can save your life, just like driving a car. 3-point contact. When mounting or dismounting a forklift, you must have 3 points of contact, either 2 feet and 1 hand, or 2 hands and 1 foot. It's exactly like climbing up and down a ladder. Remember to face the forklift. Staying aware, watch out for pedestrians. You can see in that top right picture, you got a guy driving forward with a load up, and looks like there's someone walking towards the travel path. Always look over both shoulders before traveling reverse. Utilize your horn, make eye contact with pedestrians to make sure you've seen each other. Tip over, so some ways to prevent tip overs include not turning with a raised load, ensuring that the load is balanced. Take extra care when working on ramps or uneven surfaces. In this case, in the case of a tip over, you'll want to lean in the opposite direction of the overturn. That way your body's not hitting the ground first. Hold on tight to the steering wheel and brace feet. And then stay in seat, do not jump. That's probably the worst thing you can do. So some other common practices, on all grades, the load and load engaging means shall be tilted back if applicable, and raised only as far as necessary to clear the road surface. Under all travel conditions, the industrial truck shall be operated at a speed that will permit it to be brought to a stop in a safe manner. Horseplay, stunt driving, obviously not permitted. If there's any wet, slippery floors, operators required to slow down. Dockboard or bridge plates shall be properly secured before they are driven over. Dockboards or bridge plates shall be driven over carefully and slowly at their rated capacity, never exceeded. Running over loose objects shall be avoided for obvious reasons. And then when negotiating turns, speed shall be reduced to a safe level by means of turning the hand steering wheel in a smooth, sweeping motion. Except when maneuvering at a very low speed, the wheel shall be turned at a moderate, even rate. Some others, forks being lifted too high when parked, it's minor, but it's still a trip hazard. Propane nozzles being crazy tight for no reason, that's something I've seen a lot. Fork extensions being left on the forklifts when no longer in use. That's not where they're supposed to be stored. Not everyone wants to use them. So make sure you put those back in their designated place when you do get them. Parts stored in the wrong areas. Personnel left the forklift wherever they last used it, leading to lost time in order to hunt these down. That's another big thing I've seen. Forklift drivers leaving forklifts dead in the water without any gas, just leaving it where it died. Just some things to try to avoid, just to help the next person out and keep some organization. Some other things to consider. Weight compared to cars. Some weigh almost triple the amount of cars. They are rear wheel steering, like I mentioned before. Also want to be careful with loads that are outside of the wheelbase. Want to get familiar with the braking system. The constant changing of the center of gravity, and then always want to maintain 3 chuck lengths when traveling. So some definitions. We've brought up load center and center of gravity. So we'll define it here. The load center is a horizontal distance from the load's edge to line of action through the load's center of gravity. Center of gravity is the point at which all the surrounding weight is equal. It is the point at which an object is in balance. The combined center of gravity is the point at which vehicle weight and load weight combine. When the combined center of gravity is within the vehicle's stability triangle, the PIT will not tip. Load center of gravity, like we said, it's the point in the load around which all weight is evenly distributed. The load center of gravity is the distance from the face of the forks to the load center of gravity. Many forklifts are rated using a 24-inch load center, which means that the load center of gravity must be 24 inches or less from the face of the forks. So, can the center of gravity change? It sure can. Some things that can cause the center of gravity to change are ramps, tilting, the bounce factor, braking, lifting, and lowering. Stability triangle. So, which truck is more stable? It would be the one on the right. The right lift truck is more stable. It's got the most acceptable center of gravity. Here's another picture, overhead picture, just to kind of give you a good idea. X in this image represents the center of gravity of the forklift and the maximum load. Y represents the center of gravity of the forklift without any load. A represents the pivot point on the rear axle. B represents the front left wheel, and C represents the front right. So maintenance for industrial trucks. Any industrial truck not in safe operating condition shall be removed from service. All repairs shall be made by authorized personnel. Employees are not authorized to repair industrial trucks. And they should not be altered so that relative positions of the various parts are different from what they were when originally received from the manufacturer, nor shall they be altered either by addition or extra parts not provided by the manufacturer or by elimination of any parts. So essentially, no employees are permitted to make repairs on any power industrial truck, no matter the circumstance. And then back to the modifications point, altering it, adding those in any way is not allowed. Additional counterweighting. A forklift shall not be done unless approved by the industrial truck manufacturer. If at any time an industrial truck is found to be in need of repair or in any way unsafe, the industrial truck shall be taken out of service until it's been restored. Any industrial truck that emits hazardous sparks or flames from the exhaust system shall immediately be removed from service and not returned to service until the cause for the emission of sparks and flames has been eliminated. And industrial truck shall be kept in clean condition, free of lint, excess oil, and grease. So be on the lookout for things like this prior to operating a power industrial truck. It would be tragic if you didn't do your due diligence and inspect and miss something that could harm you or another employee. So, industrial truck shall be inspected before placed in service and should not be placed in service if the inspection shows any condition that adversely affects the safety of the vehicle. Operators are required to verify that a daily inspection has been done. All are to be filled out, no blank spaces. If it's unsafe to operate, it should be noted on the inspection form and removed from service. So, just some things to look for that'll be on the inspection form. You got tires, wheels, head, tail lights, gauges, operator restraint, warning decals, overhead guard, load bracket, engine oil, hydraulic oil, radiator, engine, steering, service brakes, parking brake, horn, audible alarm, and then you want to check the controls, lift, lower, tilt, and then make sure it's got fuel battery. And then that image, you can see it's a common failure point for forks. So here's the inspection form that you will be filling out. It goes over, you got the model number, serial number, date, stuff like that, and then you go through damage, leaks, tires, wheels, forks, chains, gauges, battery, guards, safety devices, horn, steering, pretty much everything you went over in the last slide. And then you got the day column, so you'll go through and mark okay if it's okay, and then you'll write something in the other box if any repairs are needed. Executing turns. You want to approach and turn slowly, sound horn, stay close to inside corner, and you also want to watch rear end swing. Racking and unracking loads. You want to align truck and position mass. Watch rear end swing in narrow aisles. Raise load and inch into position. Lower forks to replace or to place load. Watch top clearance from middle rack position. Do not over lower forks. Check for rear obstacles. Sound horn and back away. Do not push load with forks. Never turn the truck with load raised in the air. And always go straight in and out of racking. For attended and unattended forklifts, for attended, less than 25 feet and within sight, you want to tilt forward, lower the fork, set the handbrake, return to neutral, and you may leave the truck on. But if it is unattended, which would be more than 25 feet or out of sight, you'll do all the same stuff, but you'll want to turn off the truck. Loading docks. If you got a delivery coming in at the dock, you want to talk to the driver, chalk the wheels, secure dock plates, check cargo floors. Always be aware of your surroundings. The check cargo floors point. You want to check for daylight. As you can see, the floor of the inside of the truck trailer wasn't secure. Most likely missing rivets. So this is what can happen if it has a fault. Odds are outside vendors are probably going to be dropping stuff off in these sort of cases, so they may not be aware of issues with their own trucks and equipment. Ramps. So without a load, you want to travel with forks pointing down the grade. With a load, load pointing up the grade. So there's a photo there. We also got a photo here, going down the ramps, then going up. Propane handling and storage. So storage and handling of liquefied petroleum natural gas shall be in accordance with NFPA storage and handling of liquefied petroleum gas. Propane is flammable gas capable of causing fire or explosion. It is a cryogenic liquid capable of causing freezer burn / frostbite to skin. Propane is heavier than air and will settle to the floor if there is a leak. Propane cylinders are not to be transported via forklift unless in a storage rack. Use a dolly. I've seen firsthand where these propane tanks have been dropped or damaged when employees try to transport them manually. So grab a cart or a dolly to avoid injuring yourself. So all propane cylinders are to be stored in designated areas outside. The propane cylinder shall be secured by placing the cylinders in designated storage racks. When storing propane cylinders, keep upright and away from any sources of heat, sparks, fire, or electrical circuits. If you detect a leak, remove the forklift from use until it's repaired. Make sure you wear proper gloves, eye protection when performing propane activities, which includes connecting or disconnecting a cylinder. To change out a propane cylinder, you want to close the propane cylinder valve, keep the engine running to clear off propane in the fuel line. Shut off the ignition after the engine stops. Loosen the hose from the empty propane cylinder slowly, allowing pressure to bleed off. Release the securing clamp on the empty propane cylinder and remove from the forklift. Ensure cylinder does not strike anything. Lift the full propane cylinder onto the forklift and secure it to forklift. Ensure cylinder does not strike anything. Check the fuel line, hose connection to ensure the rubber O-ring is present in good condition and properly seated. You'll then want to connect the fuel line hose to full propane cylinder. Open the valve slowly, listening and smelling for leaks. If a hose is leaking, turn off the propane cylinder valve, slowly open the fuel line to bleed off the pressure and then disconnect. Check the condition of the O-ring. Reconnect fuel line hose to slowly open the propane cylinder valve. If the leak does continue, close the propane cylinder valve, disconnect the fuel hose line and notify your supervisor. Don't let issues like this slide under the rug just because you don't want to deal with them. It's not worth it in the long run. Just contact your direct supervision if there is a leak in your propane tank. So just make sure you get familiar with propane tanks and how to handle them. You got the locator pin at the bottom, service valve full open, and then the relief valve. So if your industrial truck isn't propane and it's battery, battery charging installation shall be located in areas designated for that purpose. Facility shall be provided for flushing and neutralizing spilled electrolyte, for fire protection, for protecting charging apparatus from damage by trucks, and for adequate ventilation for dispersal of fumes from gas and batteries. A conveyor, overhead hoist, or equivalent material handling equipment shall be provided for handling batteries. Reinstalled batteries shall be properly positioned and secured in the truck. A carboy, tilter, or siphon shall be provided for handling electrolyte. When charging batteries, acid shall be poured into the water. Water shall not be poured into the acid. Trucks shall be properly positioned and brake applied before attempting to change or charge batteries. Care shall be taken to ensure that vent caps are functioning, and the battery or compartment covers shall be open to dissipate heat. So more on this, in the areas where there's a charging area, post no smoking signs. Smoking is not prohibited. Use non-sparking tools. Prevent open flame, sparks, or electrical arcs in the battery charging area. Provide adequate ventilation. Open the battery cover when charging so that the hydrogen gas can vent better. And some hazards with batteries include battery weight, battery acid, electrical shorts, or explosive fumes. So what's wrong with this picture? If you look closely, the charger has a broken connector and exposed wire. So just things like that, pre-inspection, things to look for. You're not just looking at the forklift, you gotta look at the charger too, and all that stuff. So charging area, one on the left is not ideal, one on the right is. It's a prime example of how to not band and keep a battery charging station for your power industrial truck. One on the left, sitting on the ground, has cords all over the place. One on the right, mounted off the ground and in much better condition. So, want to avoid these bad habits. Remember, it's up to you. Safety first. Take what you've learned today on forklifts. Always operate them in the safest way possible. Don't be another statistic because you wanted to act careless. Don't let it happen to you. Be careful. This machine has no brain. You do. So use your own. So some of the final things we went through: do your pre-trip inspection, know your surroundings, always use 3 points of contact, use your seatbelt, look over your shoulder when in reverse, focus on the job, and always make sure you're capable of driving the lift. So now we have reached the hands-on portion for forklifts. So what we'll do today with this, we will head out to the shop, a group of us, and each of you will take turns going through the pre-inspection form, which realistically we should spend about 5 minutes doing that. So you'll go through, you'll check, check tires, check the forks, make sure lights, horn, controls, all that stuff's working. Really want you to be diligent and careful with that when you're checking that, because you got to get used to that before you use it every day, and you got to be able to keep track of those and be responsible, because whoever's using it next, they get it in the condition you left it in. So if you leave it in a dangerous spot, situation with stuff wrong with it, then that hurts you and hurts the next person. So if you inspect it and or you don't inspect it and you miss stuff because you didn't inspect it, that could cause an accident, injury, and we don't want that. So once you complete that, we will you'll be tasked with doing an obstacle course, picking up a load off of a high rack, bringing it down carefully, making sure your load's not too high, your forks are low to the ground. Got the taking the COG into consideration, all that stuff, and then you'll drive around with it, bring it back, and show that you can re-rack it where it was. So some of the things we'll go through in this evaluation form. Infractions include hitting or bumping an obstacle. So if you run into crate or a wall or a cage or a rack or anything like that, we'll deduct there. Excessive maneuvering, if you're jerky while you're driving it, or even with the forks, we'll take that into consideration. If you're not fully engaged, if you're just not there, if you're not into it, that's another problem, because this is not something to be lackadaisical with. Forks not tilted back. You want to make sure when you get that load, you tilt the forks back. Load too high, it's another thing we'll consider. If you drag or drop the forks or load, if you miss the placement, so when you go to put the item back up on the rack, if you misplace it, if you don't get it in where it was before, we'll dock you there. If you disturb cargo, if anything in your load is disturbed or damaged, using the horn before backing up, not looking over shoulder in reverse, not setting parking brake. That goes back to the attended, unattended stuff. Didn't neutralize controls. Forks not flush to the floor. And then, like I mentioned, if you damage any walls, equipment, or cargo. So 15, time. So we are considering time into this. Obviously you can't take more than 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. You can, but if that's the case, then you really don't know what you're doing, and you're driving, and you're not fully engaged, and you probably shouldn't be operating one. So that's the operator evaluation form. So we'll go out and we will get that started. So welcome back, everybody. Great job for those who completed the hands-on evaluation for the forklifts. You've now completed the first half of this training. We are now moving on to aerial platform lifts. This too falls under the Power Industrial Truck title, so majority of the rules and regulations apply. In fact, everything pretty much for the first half of the forklift stuff we talked about, training requirements, all that stuff falls and is pretty much identical with Power Industrial Trucks, with aerial platform lifts. So we won't spend nearly any time on that. We'll kind of just get right into aerial platform lifts, like I said, because everything else is pretty much the same. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of those boom lifts. Some of the main objectives we'll be covering today: safe operating procedures, maintenance and inspection, traveling and parking, some battery and propane considerations, and then the big one will be fall protection. So we'll get started with a quick video here.
Elevated work platforms allow us to safely perform various tasks and maintenance operations at heights that otherwise may be unreachable. These elevated working platforms come in various configurations, such as this boom lift, which can maneuver the work platform beyond the base of the vehicle, as well as the commonly used scissor-type lifts, which will keep the work platform over the base of the vehicle.
There are many different styles of lifts available from a wide variety of manufacturers, each type designed for various applications and site conditions. And while each type of lift platform may look and perform differently, they all have one thing in common: the potential for serious injury and death when operated in an unsafe or improper manner. Electrocution, falls, crushed body parts, and tip-overs are just a few examples of the types of incidents that result from the unsafe or careless operation of an elevated work platform.
Because of these dangers, only trained and authorized employees may operate an aerial work platform. If you have not been trained or have not been properly authorized by your company, then you may not operate an elevated work platform. Also understand that authorized operators have a responsibility not to allow unauthorized personnel to operate the lift. A lesson learned by Will Howard, a maintenance worker.
So that's our first video. It just kind of goes over some of the quick safety stuff. So we'll jump right into aerial platform lift operation. Basket occupants must wear fall protection harness and lanyard attached to the basket, which we will get into. Personnel will stand firmly on the floor of the lift and will not climb on the side rails or the edge of the basket. Always know the rated workload of your aerial lift platform and never exceed it. You want to know the weight of all personnel, tools, other items placed on the platform. Disperse the load evenly before raising the platform. Prime example in that picture right there, always be on the floor of the basket. Area beneath an operating aerial lift must be cordoned off and access to that area must be restricted. Do not carry materials on railings unless approved for that purpose. Keep work surfaces and elevating mechanisms clean and clear debris. Restricting access, like I mentioned, may be accomplished through the use of barricades, cones, and signs. Before attempting to clean a machine, lower the platform to stow position and turn off the engine. Remove or put away tools, ropes, harnesses, lanyards, and hooks when not in use. Traveling, so you want to inspect the surface on which you'll be working or traveling. Look for holes, obstacles, drop-offs, rough spots, weak spots on covers or on ramps or floors. Look for oil spills, wet spots, slippery surfaces, standing water, stuff that could get in your way. Clear away all debris, make sure all passengers are clear. The aerial platform lift must be on a firm, flat, smooth, and level surface when the platform is raised. Maintenance, pretty much the same. Like I said, some of this stuff is the forklift, since they all falls under that PIT umbrella. Essentially here, no employees are permitted to make repairs on any PIT no matter the circumstance. Modifications are also not allowed. Inspections are pretty much the same across the board. Like we mentioned before, it doesn't just help you, the operator, but it helps the person after you, as well as your company. These forms are required to be filled out and tracked, for auditing purposes. And it's recommended that these are kept in a safe location, preferably a folder located near the PIT. So just like the forklift, we have a aerial platform lift inspection form. You guys will do this on the hands-on portion. You'll go out there similar to the forklift and go over, put your name, date, model number of the lift, and you'll go over pass, fail. It goes through a variety of equipment inspection checklist items, including manual, safety decals, control panel, lights, motion alarms, guardrails, work platforms clear, emergency lowering function, guarding, battery, braking, all that stuff. So these are all required to ensure all parts are in working order and to identify issues before they occur, or if they occur. These inspections also help extend the life of material handling equipment as they identify issues that need maintenance to keep aerial platform lifts in proper working order. So aerial platform lift parking, you'll want to select a safe parking location which is a firm level surface and is clear of obstruction and traffic. You'll then want to lower the boom to the stowed position, rotate the turntable so that the boom is between the non-steer wheels. Turn the key switch to the opposition and remove the key to secure unauthorized use and charge the batteries. Battery handling and storage, pretty similar to forklift like I mentioned. So not much new here. In areas where it is being stored or charged, no smoking prohibited, take precautions, non-sparking tools, prevent open flame, sparks, electrical arcs in the battery charging area, just trying to minimize the danger of explosion. Get adequate ventilation in the area, and then when you're charging the battery, open the battery cover so that the hydrogen gas can vent better. Alright, so now as we mentioned in the video, and as I mentioned, fall protection is necessary. So according to the OSHA standard, employees must wear a personal fall arrest or travel restraint system when working from a boom lift. So here is a quick video that demonstrates that.
Usually breasts fit small-chested women like this.
Yapping, you guys.
Good morning everyone, my name is Rob Cavalieri. I'm the Regional Safety Training and Compliance Manager for Manlift. And this morning we're going to give you some safety tips about the correct harness protocols and harness use on mobile elevating work platforms. So specific for mobile elevating work platforms. So we move along here. Here's a good graphic to show you the full body harness. The harness I'm wearing now is called a full body harness, and here you can see it here, the rear, the front, and we're also going to talk about the lanyard associated with the body harness. And here you can see a shock absorbing device, and we'll also discuss where and how the shock absorbing device should be used with harnesses on mobile elevating work platforms. So when I step into the basket of this boom type elevating work platform, I'm going to be setting up in a restraint type of situation, restraint type fall protection. So I hook my carabiner onto the approved attachment point, and then I need to adjust my lanyard to the shortest possible position to prevent me from falling out of the basket or platform. So now I'm going to step into the basket of this boom type elevating work platform, and my lanyard will be in an arrest type of setup. So I'll show you what that means. So I hook my carabiner onto the approved attachment point, and now my lanyard will be adjusted depending on the basket size, so I can move freely around to do my work, but also safely operate the mute, see where I'm going. But now you can see I can easily get into a position where I can fall out of the basket or platform. So really that's an arrest situation, and in an arrest situation, I need a shock absorbing device fitted in my lanyard. And we can talk about that, or you'll learn more about that when you do the harness half-day IPAF harness course. Another important consideration, when I have attached my carabiner in my mobile elevating work platform, I need to understand, is that attachment point which is approved designed for an arrest load or only a restraint load? Because if it's only designed for a restraint load and I go and fall out of the basket or platform, maybe it's going to fail when I need not to fail. Okay, so we need to look at our operator manual and speak to the manufacturer to be clear about the approved attachment points. Are they rated for an arrest type situation or only a restraint type situation when we're talking about fall protection? A little bit on the carabiners. There's different types of carabiners you'll get. This is not really a good style. It's more of a scaffolding type carabiner. Why? Because it can allow an operator to incorrectly attach the carabiner around the handrail. The handrail is not allowed to take that type of load. It's not designed to. Remember, you should only be attaching the carabiner to the boom lift approved harness attachment point. And another couple of things, here's one too. If I use this type of carabiner, once I clip it on, I've got to remember then to lock it. So again, if we can get the automatic ones, it's much better because then the operator doesn't have to think about locking the locking device on his carabiner. So just a couple of things there. You'll learn more about that when you do the harness half-day course. So thank you everyone. If you're interested in learning more, and hopefully you are, I encourage you to click on the link below. You'll see it now.
So yeah, just a quick overview on harnesses before we jump into the use. So personal fall arrest system, I'm sure you heard him mention that, should be used when employees are exposed to vertical drops of 6 feet or more. Shall bring an employee to a complete stop and limit the maximum deceleration distance traveled to 3.5 feet. It shall be strong enough to withstand twice the potential impact energy of an employee free falling 6 feet. Consists of 3 components we'll get into: anchorage, full body harness, and connecting device. So an anchorage, basically a secure attachment for workers to connect fall protection lanyards or lifelines via a body harness for fall arrest or fall restraint purposes. An anchorage can be a complete engineered system designed specifically for fall protection or a secure connection point on an existing structure. So we want to provide a secure point of attachment for lifelines and lanyards. Your life depends on their anchor holding in a fall, in the situation of a fall. Must be able to withstand 5,000 pounds per person, 310 pounds total body weight with tools or force without failing. And operators of these boom lifts shall be secured to the anchor point provided by the equipment manufacturer by either a self-retracting lanyard or by a lanyard short enough to prevent the employee from being ejected. Next, you got full body harnesses. Full body harness is a body holding device used to protect workers from falls by distributing the force of the fall over a large area of the body, ensuring that the subject of the fall remains suspended in an upright position after the fall has occurred. So straps are secured, like I said, about the body in a manner evenly distributing the fall arrest forces. Attachments such as the back D-ring are provided for fall arrest, restraint, retrieval. When the body harness is worn properly, rear D-rings are located in the center of the wearer's back near shoulder level. A harness may also have an attached body belt as a positioning device. So connecting devices, we got lanyards. Lanyards are the vital connecting link between harness and the anchorage. Lanyards shall allow for a maximum free fall of 6 feet. Deceleration device / shock absorber is included on most lanyards. It shall be located near the harness D-ring and should be 3.5 feet in length. Self-locking snap hooks are provided, and the different types of lanyards, shock absorbing, positioning, and tieback. So self-retracting lifelines are used in situations where work at height is executed and where users work in fall arrest or fall restraint situations. When working in fall restraint, users cannot reach the area where they have the probability to fall. The retractable lanyard is designed to lock up within 2 to 24 inches of a free fall. It should be used directly overhead. Tying a lanyard off to an adjacent pole, structure, or equipment while working from an aerial platform lift shall not be permitted. The retractable lanyard shall not walk more than 6 feet away from the device, and that lanyard shall not be used with a lanyard or other lengthening device. And then you got shock absorbing. Retractable lanyards should only be made with nylon webbing material. Shock absorbing retractable lanyard shall not exceed 6 feet in length. Never tie a shock absorbing retractable lanyard back into itself. The use of non-locking snap hooks is prohibited, and no more than one snap hook shall be hooked to any D-ring. In case you aren't familiar with shock absorbing lanyard, they are designed to absorb up to 80% of the stopping force of a regular lanyard, but usually not recommended in most workspaces. So tie-off procedures. When you're in a full body harness for fall protection, connecting devices shall be attached to the D-ring in the middle of the back on the back of your harness. Always try to tie off to an anchorage point at or above the D-ring of the harness. You should always tie off in a manner that ensures no lower level is struck during free fall. Like we mentioned before, lanyards shall never be wrapped back into themselves. That weakens the lanyard by about 75%. Obviously, don't let it come into contact with sharp or rough edges. We'll get into inspection stuff next slide. And then when using a full body harness and lanyard for travel limiting, the lanyard shall be of a length that will not permit the employee to reach the fall hazard. So, long story short, tying off correctly can essentially be the difference in life or death. So inspection and maintenance, like I said, it's probably the most important thing with harnesses and fall protection. If you don't inspect it, you could miss something that could cause you serious harm. Anything glaring, any wear, damage should result in removing it from service immediately. Cleaning and storage. Make sure you use approved cleaning agent for fall protection. Failure to do so could allow it to deteriorate and fail when being used. And then we want to make sure that they're stored in a safe and clean environment. So that covers the gist of aerial platform lifts and fall protection, like I mentioned. All that stuff we just went over, we will now take out onto the floor and complete the second hands-on exercise using a similar form, the aerial platform lift operator evaluation form. So we will go out, we'll also take the pre-use inspection form. We'll go out and, like I said before, spend about 5-ish minutes each operator before you get on and we evaluate you. You'll want to go through the inspection form, check tires, check controls, lights, all that good stuff. Make sure that the floor is clear, no obstacles in the way, make sure you got your fall protection. Just as like we mentioned before with the forklift, it's not meant to be a pain. It's you're doing it for your own safety and everyone else's safety around you, and the next person that uses it. And like we said, it's a requirement. So failure to do so could result in serious harm to you or somebody else. So that's why we add that to the hands-on portion. And then once you get that, you'll hop in, you'll don your harness properly, which we mentioned at the beginning, if you remember, is one of our performance-based objectives. And then we'll evaluate your performance similar to the forklift. Previous inspection is the first line item. You got your fall protection, lower control station function test, plan route, check clearance, clear view and direction of travel, verified balance and stability, and then like we hit on, barricading the area below, whether it's with signs, cones, stanchions, stuff like that. Boom up, down, in, out, so just getting feel the basic controls, making sure you know what you're doing, you know how to operate it. Lift turn 360 degrees. So just making sure that you're maximizing it to its full capacity, getting used to it, knowing what it can do and whatnot. Proper maneuvering, make sure you can get around obstacles, tight corners, stuff like that. Lift off with emergency stop. Deploy, set up, store outriggers. During dismount, 3-point contact, same with the forklift, it's a huge. And then damage to walls, equipment, cargo will result in failure. And this one, like the forklift one, does not have the time constraint on there, just because it is a little more monotonous and a little more difficult, I would say, because it's not like hopping in a forklift, you got a steering wheel, and there's a lot more controls that go into it, and it's a completely different vehicle, so that's why that's not included. So that is the aerial lift platform operator evaluation form. So we will get out and we'll get that going. So that concludes our powered industrial truck training, forklift, fall protection, and aerial platform lift. I just wanted to say thank you all for joining me here today. It was a pleasure. You all did great. Until next time.